building a Kitfox. I'll just show you what this looks like. It looks pretty. It looks pretty similar to the Sky Rangers, which you guys are probably familiar with. The specs are probably closer to a Cessna 152 in terms of total weight. I think it should be a little bit lighter. I think a Cessna 152 is pounds with a 1,600 pound max. This should weigh probably 950 with a 1,500 pound max capacity. It can be registered as the light sport as the 1320 max, but then technically, somewhat illegally, I probably could load it to 1,500. So it's a pretty old design. It's actually the 7th iteration. It's a Super Sport 7, and so it's basically a rag and tube design. So with the 4130 chromoly tubing, all welded together. I think it's either TIG or MIG. I can't really tell. Someone else could. You think it's all TIG? Yeah, cool. And then it's got the cloth covering. I'm going to talk probably most about the cloth covering because it's pretty interesting stuff. It's a relatively new product compared to the polyfiber systems, which a lot of the planes are covered with. Which probably has it's probably actually, I think the Wright brothers pretty much pioneered the polyfiber like system. The kind of one of the most unique aspects to this plane is basically very subtle. The main struts for the wings, they swept back this lower mount, which is right above the landing gear there, and they did that to align that pivot with the rear bolt spar pivot of the wing. And so what that allows is with pulling one pin of the front spar, both wings just fold back, which is kind of neat for towing. It's best not to do it airborne, supposedly, but yeah, you can and it'll be 8 feet wide, and so you can store it in a normal garage. You can tow it down the road legally, which is kind of a plus. It's as easy it is to fold the wings. They basically say you don't want to fold them every time you fly because it's just enough of a pain that it'd be nice to not have to do that. But you can, and some people do. But it probably adds, it's probably a 15-minute project. You have to disconnect the aileron. You have to pull that pin over half tanks, I guess. It'll leak the fuel out onto the wing. So the easy solution to that is to put a cap that's not vented on your fuel tank, but then you got to be really sure to switch those caps out. So that's kind of a dangerous game. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I'll probably end up there. Actually, it has provisions. You can barely see these dots. It has provisions for to mount some external hardware temporarily to the tail, so you can actually make a big almost like a stand. Like a table like that, and you just modify it to hold the back up, which I'll probably do. There's a bunch of carbon fiber pieces you could buy for it, like the cowlings, and I didn't spring for that. Kitfox does an amazing job selling just like a remarkably complete kit. And so I think the one thing kind of surprisingly that was not included in kind of everything I ordered in like one fell swoop was a fuel pressure sensor. For some reason that didn't come with the engine from Rotax, and then it didn't come from Kitfox. And I talked to John McVean about it, and he's just like, that should be Rotax. He's like, I'm not including that. He's like, I'll sell it to you separate. I'm like, well, then sell it to me separate. So I have that fuel pressure sensor. But literally everything else. You go out on their website and you have the build sheet, and you can just order every single thing you want in a pretty organized manner. The lead time was like a year and a half. So they're not in a huge hurry building these. They don't have a huge facility, so they're just kind of building one at a time or something like that. In terms of kits, you can buy this as a completed plane also, and I don't know what the lead time on that is. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So I actually went to, so it's a year and a half wait for the plane. So I talked to them, like, hey, can you send the instructions, now? And it was great. Heather, who's the owner's wife, the second in command's wife, she said it's a very family-run business, which is kind of fun out in Idaho. She said, just wait like a month and we'll have a new revision, which I was actually pretty excited about because that's a big deal to get another revision on something like this. And so I ended up waiting 3 months, which is fine. And they sent me this brand new revision. And I mean, it is amazing. It is like almost perfect. I think I found like one official typo where the part number was just wrong. But like that's out of hundreds and hundreds of pages, and probably 1,000 part numbers. So it is just really well done. It basically, like a typical page, will be pictures on the right and then words on the left. And so you literally just open this up and it tells you what parts you need and a picture of how it goes together, and then as few words as possible, which is fantastic. I really like the pictures. But basically, what Kitfox applies is the TIG welded chromoly tubing frame with a couple ribs, not really ribs, just structural members in there. And then they supply laser cut wooden plywood ribs that you have to put in place, and you just basically glue them in place. Interestingly, the critical work is done in terms of the welding, and they even powder coat it all. So I didn't have to do any welding. I didn't have to do any powder coating. And the ribs are very precisely cut out on like probably a laser CNC cutting table. But what's kind of interesting, because things vary in manufacturing, and it's not acceptable to have short ribs, all the ribs are a little long. And so every single rib on every single wing, every single surface has to be trimmed to length with a Dremel tool, which is sort of just comical because like everything else is like perfect, but every single rib just wouldn't fit. And it's one of those things that wasn't like every rib would fit by a different amount. Every single rib was like an 1/8 inch too long. So you're like, you could have just made them all an 1/8 inch shorter, but maybe that's just with this wing. Their jigs may not hold them quite perfect. So anyway, so every single rib has to be trimmed, and then every single rib has to be varnished. And it generally takes, like, the first coat just gets sucked right up and it disappears, as many of you know. It's plywood, yeah. It has like a whole different shape to it. But the Speedster wing is the actual sport wing, just trimmed to length by one bay. Yep, clipped wing, exactly. Yep. Yeah, clipped wing is a Speedster, yeah. And so like the time-consuming stuff is just kind of, they say, like just dog work. Like you're just doing kind of mindless stuff. But if you don't do it, like for instance, if these ribs weren't straight, you'd notice it. And then if they didn't line up with the ribs in the elevator, which is right beyond this, you would see it as a built plane. At least I think you would. So so a lot of care is taken to, like, position the ribs just right, trim them just right, varnish them. I probably varnished most of these 4 times because the first varnish disappears. The second varnish is okay but spotty. So then you do a third, and then at some point you're touching up anyway, so you just put a 4th on there. I didn't. I brushed it. Yeah. So it's just really time consuming, and like even the spraying is tricky because you either choose to put you want to either varnish the ribs before or after you assemble them on the wing. If you varnish them before, they say you should tape off the ends so that the Hysol 2-part epoxy can bond to the wood better. So then you're like, you're masking all these ribs, both ends. It's tough. I mean, like, it would be nice actually if they just, instead of using plywood, use a little bit more modern material like carbon fiber or fiberglass or something, because then you wouldn't have to varnish at all. But it's so they just haven't. I mean, they don't have the resources to like make major changes that often, and so and these ribs work fine. And it's one of those things where they don't want to increase the cost of the kit any, and so by having the builder do a lot of the legwork is not a bad option. So I mean, I don't know, what are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 times 4, so what is that, 28? So, and then, I mean, there's probably 50 ribs total, including the vertical stabilizer. And then like the wings each have a dozen ribs. I sprung for the quick build wing kit where they do a ton of work. The wings need a certain amount of dehydral and twist and sweep built into the wings. So you'd really need to, and I saw the jigs at the factory in Idaho. What's that? They did that for me. Yeah, I saw the jigs that they had, and like you can't do it right without the jigs. And so you'd have to build the jigs, which is a whole nother project. And like the first time I build anything, it's not that good. So I'd have to build 2 iterations of jigs. And so anyway, I just paid the money for the quick build wings, which I'm glad I did. Do a pretty good job pricing it out. Like they have a low base. Well, it's not low. It's a I think the plane itself minus avionics minus engine is I think around 45 or 50 grand. But that's with none of like the options, and all of the options are like pretty necessary. Not, but I mean like it's not necessary. Like you don't need to have this airfoiled wing. I know, right? But like they have the flat option. You know, all of it helps. I mean, it's one of those things where like all of the options are better and very easy to justify, right? So then you just add up like 15 grand of options really quickly, and you're like, well, that's not a $45,000 fuselage anymore. But it's fine. I mean, that's how they rope you in, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to build this for 45 grand. Awesome. All right, exactly, and yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'll jump right into that now. So another thing that Kitfox does that's just fantastic is they have basically 4 different packages of avionics, all that are extremely similar, and it's all the Garmin G3X based. And so they sell you the actual Garmin touchscreen and comm radio, and if you want an autopilot with 2-axis servos, all in a pre-laser cut aluminum panel that's already been powder coated, and numbers and word and labels stenciled onto it, and all of the wires, every single wires is terminated on that panel, and then is cut to the right length and labeled nicely to go to all of the electronics in the plane. Yeah, I mean they did. Looking because I was debating on just doing it myself. Yeah, it's worth the money, I guess. Yeah. I'm hoping my daughter's not college material. Because if she is, I might be out of a plane. But that's for later on down the road. All the connectors behind the panel would be amazing to even see, because there's just all these little different terminals for different gauge wires, and some are spades and some are round, and I mean, it's one of those things where you would have, and then all the different switches and breakers and everything. So and Kitfox strategically doesn't give you that bill of materials, so you can go source the stuff. I don't even know. Yeah, I mean, it's probably something like that with all the avionics. I actually very successfully basically wrote 2 checks to Kitfox, and I don't even know which 2 checks that was covered in that. So I like when my wife asked me how much something was, I can honestly say like I don't even know. Like it was like I don't even know. It's like I don't even know what check that was wrapped up in. But yeah, I mean it's like the plane's 50, the avionics and wiring harness is probably 25, and then like the engine's 25. So and again, I refuse to add those numbers up. Another question I will get asked is, are you done with the plane yet? Right, exactly, yeah. Never. No, never. Another just funny example of just kind of like the dog work required to do this is, so the whole fuselage is welded up and powder coated, and there's a whole bunch of like these lugs here welded on, and then they powder coat the whole thing. So the powder coat, they do a great job. They not only powder coat the outside, but like they get the powder coat inside the ID of every single hole. And there's a lot of holes on this plane. So every single hole has beautiful powder coat in there, which means that whatever is supposed to fit in there doesn't fit. So like literally not one bolt, bushing, anything fit. Like it just, you had to remove the powder coating. And they say, they're kind of adamant about this. They're like, don't just use they're like, don't use a drill bit. Like a drill bit leaves like a gun rifling on the idea of a hole. They're like, use a reamer, right? So they sell you in the builder's kit a bunch of reamers, all the right size, which is awesome. But then you go to ream these holes, and like like you put this in a drill chuck, which is normally what you do. Well, like you can't fit this in a drill chuck and ream that hole. It just doesn't work. And so it's one of those things where, like, you can put vice grips on this and turn it, but like, you have to spin this probably like 100 times to get it through. So anyway, so I looked online, of course, because everyone's got a solution to this. And these are hardened steel. So I put this on a little, like a Bridgeport basically, and ground hex onto this, the right size to fit a socket. And so, I did that on all of the reamers. There's like 5 or 6 reamers. So now it fits a socket. So now you can put a universal on it, and then you put your drill. And so now, after that, you can finally actually use a drill to ream out all these holes, right? Which isn't that big of a deal, but it takes some time. So then you have a bushing that fits in here, and you ream out the hole, and then you get the bushing, and like the bushing's not even close to fitting. And so you're like, oh, I guess I got to turn down the bushing. And so I got a buddy with a lathe, and I go to him. He's a good machinist. And I'm like, hey, I measured it. I'm like, I need to take 3,000 off the OD of this bushing. And he's like, he's like, that's not trivial to do. He's like, oh, yeah, exactly. Like, how do you hold it? And, he's like, just put it on a bolt and sand it down. And I'm like, that's why I'm coming to you. Like you have a lathe. Not like, this is ridiculous. And so anyway, but I looked online, and that's just the way that it is the best way to do it. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. So anyway, of course I ended up getting some bolts, and you put the bushing on it, and then but of course the head and the nut are in the way. So I machined down the head and the nut so they're smaller than the bushing, and you put this on drill. You get sandpaper and you machine it down. So you do that to all of these bushings. And you press the bushings in, which is not a big deal. But no, these are brass. They look like brass. Oh, yeah, it could be oilite. This right here. I don't even know. I think it's steel. I don't. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't look like aluminum. It's probably not stainless. It's probably just a mild steel. So this bushing goes in that bushing, but of course it doesn't fit. And it should be like a nice fit, because that's this can be a press fit, so that's fine, but you don't want it too hard. And so anyway, this, and then I take another reamer and I ream out the ID of that bushing, and this one is it's like 3/1000ths big. And it's funny because all of them are 3/1000ths big, which means like Kitfox could have just machined the bushing to fit, but they don't. So anyway, so same deal. You have a little smaller one. So you put this bushing on this, and you just kind of sand it down in the drill, burn your fingers, and finally get a nice smooth fit in there. And then a number 3 AN3 bolt goes through there. The bolt doesn't fit. So you got to ream the inside of that thing out, which is hard to do because you can't really hold it well, and if you hold it too tightly, it burrs it up, right, or ovalizes it, and then it doesn't fit nicely in there. So like every step of this plane, it's been like kind of comical, like just something that looks pretty easy, like, oh, you just got to put these bushings in. I mean, it's like I probably have an hour and a half into every single bushing set that goes in, and of course they're all kind of fit. It's kind of like building guns in the 1800s. Every gun is different, right? And so like I have to label these bushings. Like I got this bushing, it doesn't fit well in this one. This one doesn't fit well there. It's ridiculous, right? So anyway, it's fun though. It's nice not to have a timeline. So Oratex is just the brand name. Yeah, that is polyester. It's cloth. Yeah, so it's probably not that much different than the bed sheet that the Wright brothers used, right? It's polyester cloth. Dacron is another brand name for it. I don't know what Stitz has. I don't even know. You guys probably know the different names of the cloths, but it's all basically the same. It's just a polyester weave, and they'll change. And that's the key, exactly. Yes, yeah, which is really just remarkable. And it comes, it comes in big. That's from a 6 foot, 6 foot wide roll, 30 meters long, which is one of the two rolls I had. It comes in smaller rolls that really similar stuff, but the smaller rolls have the glue already on them, which is really cool. Yeah. So it's already has the glue applied. So you basically take that and you can just iron it on as a seam tape or as a patch or as a stripe, which is really neat. This, one direction, yeah. So this stuff actually is backside coated, which makes it less transparent, right? So some of the colors, especially like the yellows and whites, if you don't get the backside coating, you can just see right through it, which is fine. But I wanted the backside coating. This we'll abuse this today. Basically, you can hit this, and it'll take pretty significant abuse. In probably half an hour, most of that will just kind of come out on its own, and whatever doesn't come out, you just take this hair dryer, this heat gun, and or put it in the sun. Yeah, I mean, actually, I'll put this in the sun. Well, I'll pass it around first, but yeah, feel free to bang it, whatever. And so the two main advantages of this stuff is that it's pre-painted. So you spend a whole bunch of time putting this stuff on, like you would the polyester Seconite fabric. But then with this, the minute you take your iron off that last seam, you have a fully painted plane. Like it's totally done. Right? Yeah. Maybe not 100, but a reasonable amount, and just a ton of work. I mean, it's I know Greg spent a ton of time making his plane look beautiful, and this doesn't look as good. Yeah. No, that's to beat up. And this, it's not as shiny, certainly, as it's kind of a matte finish, and also, unlike the polyfiber systems that use like like dope to do all the seams, if you have a wrinkle or a blemish in the polyfiber process, if you want to spend the time, you can work that out. Like you can eliminate mistakes. This stuff, you can't really eliminate the mistakes. There's some wrinkles here you'll see on these rounded wingtips that there's just like a crease in the Oratex. And I hired the professional installer who installs this stuff to help me with this, because it's pretty daunting to do. Especially, you kind of need two people to pull and iron. And there's a few wrinkles that I'm like, I see that wrinkle, Tom. How do we, what do we do about that? And he's just like, nothing. I was like, what do you mean nothing? And he's just like, I can try to get it out. He's like, but there's like a 50% chance that I'm just going to make it worse. I'm like, all right, that's fair. And so yeah, there's some blemishes in this that just like Tom, the professional, was just like, we're done. Like that's like, I've learned not to chase that. Whereas the polyfiber, you would just spend more time and you'd get out all the wrinkles. Other than just having the paint included in it, or pre-painted, pre-applied, is just the durability. So it's very elastic. Yet, if you do get a tear in it, which of course, you get a big enough stick, it'll tear, and you can fix it remarkably easy. You'll still always see some sort of a seam of a patch that you put on it. Whereas I think repairing, Greg, if you get a hole in yours, can you make that disappear most likely? If you want to, yeah, right. And that's where it doesn't really matter how much time you spend. You're never going to get rid of the patch, right? You can't. There's no blending agent. It's just exactly. It's turn into a graphic, exactly. So it's just like a very utilitarian product. And it's actually, the company is based in Alaska, and that's actually that's probably the best use case for it there. They don't really care how pretty their planes are looking in Alaska, but they are putting sticks through them all the time. And I guess Tom was saying that it's very common to have a raven start just poking holes in your wing, and so this stuff you can bring this tape with you. And then, if you have, I don't know how you heat up an iron out in the woods in Alaska, but you just iron it on to repair it, and it's like a full legit repair. It's not anything that you. Right, exactly. It's ultraviolet that kills the polyester fabric. Right. Yeah. So this has, similar to what you do with polyester fabric. They put those same layers down. So this has been coated with UV, and then primer, and then top coat. So it doesn't matter if you have get the back. Correct. The backside is only for translucency. Okay. Yep, exactly. Yep. And how about, I know you're doing experimental, but you have to know on the certified airplanes. So, there's a requirement for overlaps. Yeah. It seems. Yep. They have the same thing for this as far as they do, and it's a contentious topic, right? So. Lanitz, I think, is the name of the company in Germany that makes this fabric for Oratex. They each have their own installation manual, and they vary slightly. And when Tom, who covered my plane, I think this was his 21st plane that he's covered with stuff over the past 8 years. When he covers a certified plane, he has to abide by what the book says specifically, but there's kind of 2 books. And then actually there's some things that he doesn't like how either of the books is written. And so he can do it his right way for mine, but not for the certified. And then you have an FAA inspector who wants it just the way the book is. And so there's some debate there. Good question. It's a water-based latex 1-part glue, which is great. We did this entire plane over the past basically 8 days in my garage with no masks, no respirator, no gloves. So basically, you put a coat on the backside of the Oratex and you let it dry. It depends on the humidity, but it was actually pretty dry this past week for the most part. So I would dry in 30 minutes. So you do 1 coat, wait 30 minutes, do another coat. You do the same on the fuselage. So all the tubes in the fuselage get 2 coats, dry 30 minutes each, and then you can just put it right on. Unlike contact cement for laminate countertops, if any of you have done that, when that stuff sticks, it is not moving, right? This wonderfully does not stick until you add heat and pressure, which is really good. So basically, you just drape this over the plane, and you position it. You look underneath. You make sure that you manage to match the glue with all the ribs, and so you have time, and you can just move it however you want. And then you kind of pick a place kind of in the middle, and you just take this iron and just push it right on the seam, and it just bonds pretty temporarily, actually, the Oratex to the substrate underneath it. You can still pull it out, but if you do, you probably need to reapply glue. It probably pulls it off. So you do that to set your bearing of where this is on the wing, and then you just go around to the edges, and you just basically you pull it, and the best thing to do is to pull it so tight there are no wrinkles, and that really takes 2 people. I mean, basically, I spent the majority of the past 8 days just wrestling this away from Tom. So basically, we put it on my bench, and you can't clamp it. There's really, unless you build mounts to the table based on this hardware, you basically just have to hold it, and then he just starts pulling and then ironing it, and he'll just do that the whole way. And so I'm just bear hugging every single part while he's pulling it, trying to get all the wrinkles out. And so he said he's covered a plane or 2 alone. And he says that it's almost impossible because you end up just getting wrinkles in there that you really have to spend a lot of time to get the wrinkles out with a heat gun and an iron. So he says it's really worth having another person there, just because you get a better job essentially. And you just basically aim the heat gun, and you just with a glove on, and you just push. And the key is you need heat and pressure. If you're missing either heat or pressure, the glue is not going to adhere. And so you put the heat on it, and you can kind of watch. And that it took me a while to see how it changed the sheen and the shape, but you can kind of see it just melt right in, and you can be pretty confident that it's good. And we did some test samples and everything, and that stuff. Correct. The fingers through gloves onto this big, thick, like 1/4-inch thick felt pad. That's kind of like an insulator, right? So you're not burning your hands, but you're really able to apply that heat, and then it slides nicely along the edge. And it's pretty time consuming in that you basically have to adhere the top of that all the way along the entire perimeter, and then you can go 90 degrees, but you probably should go 45. So then you do one at the top, one at 45, one at 90, another at 45, and another at 90. Every single perimeter, every single tube on the entire plane, and you have to go really slow with this because you really got to get it to heat up. And there's just no way to rush it. And so we just spent a lot of time applying glue, ironing this on, stretching first, then ironing, and actually we'd put this on, and there'd be almost no wrinkles. But if there was a little wrinkle, before you ironed the Oratex to the ribs, you'd take the heat gun and hold it about an inch away, and you would just go like this, probably slower, and we would do that to basically the entire surface of every component of the airplane. The instructions are written in a fairly conservative way to allow a non-expert to not screw it up. And I think that so for instance, the temperatures on the gun, we have it set at 370 F. Now, that to get enough heat into this, you have to move very slowly and stay about an inch off, and it just takes forever. And I asked Tom, I'm like, Tom, 370, we could crank this to 450 and then do this much quicker. And he was like, you totally could, but if you mess up, you're you're ruining it. So, my plan so far is to not rib stitch. And that's the key, exactly. The Kitfox has a 1-inch wide rib cap on the wings, and therefore there's actually an STC for the Super Cub, specifically the Super Cubs with 1-inch wide rib caps, and those do not require rib stitching. And so that gives me the confidence that if there's an STC for that, it should be legit. And so I'm not doing rib stitching. But the other really neat thing about this material and the process is at any point in the future, I can rib stitch it. And so there's no, by deciding not to rib stitch now doesn't mean I can't in the future. So if, for instance, if I read on the internet that some Super Cub or Kitfox without rib stitching falls out of the sky because the fabric didn't adhere, that night I can go and rib stitch, and then I'll take that tape and just go right over the rib stitching. And so it's something that can be done anytime. This is the most fun project ever. This is awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's this is and hiring Tom was one of the greatest educational experiences I think I've ever had. So just so fun to hire an expert, and he was super patient. So he trained me how to do it. And then I was happy to let him do all the critical parts. You know what I mean? I'm not too proud to be I'm not I need to do that. And just I did a lot of the glue application. I think I was helpful in terms of pulling and taking all the wrinkles out. But I didn't fight to do. Every time he went to do a rounded tip, he was kind of swearing at me under his breath. He's just like, I can't believe you rounded these tips. Because if I just kind of left them square, it would have been way easier for him. But it would look like hell. No plane has square wingtips. Yeah, same. It's so much fun. I ordered this kit, or I should say, I received this kit last May, and so I got it May 27th of last year, and so I'm basically 1 year into it. I just covered it. I've had the engine in it. The cowlings are fit. All the hoses were fit. The wiring's pretty much done. So I mean, it's one of those things. it's feasible that in the next few months I could have this done. I probably won't, because all I've heard is that the last 20% takes 80%, and that's probably true. So, but it's actually, I will honestly miss the day when I go into my garage and there isn't a plane in it to work on. It's awesome. It's so, I'd love to. Yeah, no, I'd love to. Again, as long as my daughter doesn't want to go to college. So yeah, no, it's been a blast, and the forums are amazing. There's so much information out there. I mean, guys that make planes are generally impressive, but then they videotape the entire thing, and then they edit it to music, and they post it on YouTube month after month, and it's just amazing. Like, before I'll do many of these steps, I'll just watch videos of other people doing them, and it just gives you the confidence. You're just like, oh, I know what not to do. I know what to do. I know what tools I need. And it's great, and the support from the factory is great. You know, I can call or email any of 3 people at Kitfox, and they'll get back to me, and they'll put something in the mail if they need to, or they'll answer my questions. I'll ask them for pictures of certain things on a finished plane that they have, and they'll go into their factory and they'll shoot the picture that I want, and they'll send it to me. And it's like, oh my God, thank you. Awesome. So it's been really fun. Yeah. Thank you. Right.
Well, this fabric is a really tight polyester weave that's got UV protectant and color already woven into it, and so it's just one layer. They make it in a thick form or a thin form. The thin is for like ultralights. This is the thicker material, but you know, it's almost impossible. You can't rip it. I mean, it just will not rip. It's a very tight. And the thing about it is, if you bump it, say a log comes up and dents it, you can then just take a heat gun and shrink it up tight for the life of the fabric. We've got a sample piece in a square wooden frame, and we've been beating on that thing for 8 years, and we just heat it up, comes right back tight. You know, the stuff just doesn't deteriorate. It's easy to fix. Don't have to paint it. Do it at home. And you know, it costs so much to paint an airplane anymore. It's really cost effective. I think it's a cheaper way of doing it too in the long run. You know, when you buy a roll of fabric, you got extra fabric in the garage. Anything happens, you already got it. Just glue up another section. See, I mean, if you totally destroy a horizontal here, you can buy another horizontal and put the same fabric on. It's already color matched.
I'm applying the second coat of glue everywhere the Oratex touches. Requires 2 coats of glue on the frame and then 2 coats of glue on the back side of the Oratex. And so you just brush it on. It's latex. You don't have to wear a mask. It doesn't burn your eyes. And cleans up with water. So it's pretty easy to work with.
So what color did you choose for your?
It's called Corsair Blue. It's just like a nice dark blue.
Just one color?
I did just one color, yeah. Tom's plane, he did 2 different colors. There's 16 colors, and so you can mix and match. You can do the wings different than the fuselage, and you can do the tails, feathers different than the rest. I just chose all blue.
And you can also put different color on the base color, right?
Right. Yep. And then you can add vinyl decals, or you can paint, or do any sort of pinstriping. I'll figure that out next year.
How are you going to deal with the edge? Like the top of the edge, you're going to just leave it that way?
We'll probably leave it that way. We could put seam tape over that, but then you end up just adding 2 more edges. So that'll be underneath, and so you won't even really see it.
Oh.
Yeah, you can't put a seam tape on it. Yeah.
weather, like either too cold or too dry, or the glue will become drier and then lose the power.
Right, yeah, I mean, as long as the temperature of the glue stays under 370, you're good. So if you get a 250-degree day, that's still okay. If you get a 400-degree day, you got problems.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got to go over this wing and really get it tight. I don't know if you can see it get tight or not. We'll take a razor blade and trim it all up nice. If you put the fabric on, you start tightening, and the structure kind of shrinks, and so you can do this for the life of the fabric, just heat it up tight. But after you heat it up, and next step is we're going to put an iron on it, get it really hot and really tight. After that, it won't loosen up again.
What's the life of the fabric? How many times you can iron it? You know what I mean?
Indefinite. We've got a sample piece we've been heating up for 8 years straight and just hammering on it, beating on it with a hammer. We've got a 19-year-old plane out there that, you know, once the fabric gets tight, you don't have to keep doing this. You get it tight, it stays tight. But as far as longevity, 19-year-old plane out there, it still looks just like this. They really don't fade. You can wax it and get a little shinier too, but it doesn't have that wet look like paint. And so if you're okay with that, it's hard to beat this stuff. German fabric, and so they sell it by the linear meter. And you can get first grade and second grade fabric, meaning if you have a certified airplane, you have to use the first grade fabric. But sometimes they offer a second grade, which has maybe a blim in it somewhere, a small blim that's not structurally, you know, detrimental, but it may have a thread cross-weaved or something. That's 40% off. This is second grade fabric, and it looks pretty good to me.
One guy had a beard, and he had his mask on his beard, but that doesn't seal well, and it changes the color of his beard from all the chemicals coming through.
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
No,
you know? Nothing's worth your health, but this is much easier and lasts longer and lighter weight. Save 20 pounds on your plane. I don't know why you would.
So Gabe, is this your first aviation project?
so yeah, this is my first plane, and been working on it for about a year, and hopefully within the next year it'll be flying.